Hi there, in this video we're going to demonstrate how to create a Joomla instance with LDAP integration using JMapMailDAP version 1. This includes the authentication and group mapping aspects of the plugin. We will start off by setting up an Ubuntu server and following up with installing the LAMP stack, getting Joomla running, and then proceeding on to setting up a Windows 2008 Active Directory. Part 2 of this video will contain the setting up of the SSO. Okay, so firstly, we're going to SSH into our server. This is the server we will be using to host Joomla and the LAMP stack. So, here it is. Here is my server. All that's happened on this server so far is I've installed the SSH server and I've renamed the host and stuff like that. Nothing else happened. This is literally a blank install. So we're going to start off first by installing the required packages. I'm going to set this off using a root bash, and to check this on your one, type in ID. If the ID is 0 root, it means that you don't need to do sudo. If it's not 0 root, then all you need to do is sudo su up, supply your password, and then you'll get a root bash. So firstly, we're going to update our repos using apt-get-update. And once this is proceeded, we're going to then install the LAMP stack. This includes installing Apache 2, which is your web server, PHP, which is needed for Joomla, among many other things. We need to install the PHP LDAP extension. We need to install MySQL Server, and we need to install the PHP extension for MySQL. Yes, and we do want to proceed. All these commands should be available in the description of this video, so you should be able to copy and paste. Lovely. Now this is for Ubuntu, this one, but it should also work with Debian. It should be the same kind of commands. Okay, I'm going to set up a password for my root to MySQL. Let's have the secure password as password. Password. I don't recommend that. Never set up a password as password. This will take a little while, depending on your virtual environment, if you're doing it virtual or your hardware. Now next, as that's just installed, I'm going to go and enable the htaccess file for Joomla, which we haven't yet installed Joomla on the machine, but we're going to enable it for when we do come along. There's a setting in here in Apache whereby, if we open this up, it allows an override of the configuration from Apache. So this will allow Apache to read htaccess files. It's not essential, this bit, but I'm doing it. And all it says is to change these values here, the allow override to all. So it allows all the sites to have their own configuration via htaccess. Next, we are going to enable the mod, Apache mod that is, for the rewrite mod. As you can see, we have disenabled that, and now it wants us to restart Apache. So let's put the restart Apache in. And as a test, let's go grab a web browser, point it towards this web server, and let's just see if we get the test page from Apache. Yes, it works. Fantastic. So that is the Apache installed, and just for some more insurance, let's just go and create the PHP info to check that PHP has also installed. So let's go back to our web browser. Apache looks like it's installed, and so does PHP. Lovely. Okay, next we're going to download Joomla. So we need our web browser. Oops. Go to joomla.org. Download. In this instance, we're going to download Joomla 3. 2.5 is the long-term edition, but we'll go for the latest here. Okay, we're going to go for the tar.gz. So we're going to right-click it, copy the link location, because that's what we're going to install into our server. Well, we're going to download it first using wget. This doesn't take too long. Okay, so we now have the tar.gz on our machine here. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a directory in our Apache root called Joomla. Okay, so what that's basically saying is that if I type in the IP address in my browser now to this machine and do /Joomla, I should probably get the yeah, there we go. That's what I've just created. I've just created this folder here. So now what we've got to do is we've got to extract this tar.gz into this folder. And to do that, we do tar xvf, we do the Joomla compressed file, and we then specify Joomla. We're going to check to make sure that everything's there. As you can see, everything's lovely. Joomla has extracted to that file, so that's fantastic. The next thing, and this bit here is all dependent on your setup as well, but I'm just going to do it just because a little bit of security can be involved. Let's just go on and change the owner of the files. Whoops. To the Apache user, so this takes it away from being probably root, it probably was the owner, to something a bit more sensible. We're also going to go and change the permissions on these files as well. So we want to find all files in here and set them to be permission 644, and the same for directories as well. Directories have 755 permissions. We have the execute permission, which is sometimes needed for traversing, especially on NFS shares. So let's just double check. Yes, we can see that permissions have changed. The owner has changed as well. Files have different permissions to the directories. Fantastic. Okay, so the next thing that we need in to get Joomla running is we need a MySQL database. So let's log in to the MySQL database. So we're going to log in as user root, and we're going to supply a password when we press enter. The password is password. That's what I set up earlier in the installation of MySQL. Next, we're going to create a new database, and we just call this Joomla. Yeah, excellent. And we better not use the root user to access this. It's not very good security. So we're also going to go create a user to set to read the Joomla database from Joomla. Let's call this user user, and there's my web server and my SQL is all in the same host. We can just use local host. Identified by oops, that would be not very good. Okay, so here we're just granting all privileges, select, insert, delete, well, all the other SQL commands you can do on the Joomla database to all tables, using JUser as our user and password as our password. We just need to flush the privileges. So SQL can reset up its privileges tables in memory. And this command here, we're just going to test to make sure that we can access the JUser user. So we've been able to connect, which is good. That means we've managed to connect with JUser onto the Joomla database, and that looks fantastic. So the next part is we're going to go back to our web browser, and now we're going to have stuff in here. So if we refresh, we now have the Joomla setup screen. Let's call this Joomla test. Joomla test site. Let's do the email. Excellent, doesn't really exist. And let's just do password here as well. Start offline. Okay, here's your database type. Yes, we want to use MySQL. If this comes up with nothing in it, if it says nothing or something like that, it means you haven't installed the MySQL plugin for PHP. So make sure you install that. It should have been installed from the app to get installed. We did right back at the start of the video. So let's use the SQL username, JUser, MySQL password, created Joomla as the database, and hopefully, yes, there we go, fantastic. And we will go and install a default English sample data to go with this. Make sure yeah, everything looks fine. We will just proceed with that. Let's click install. Okay, so it's written the configuration .php, and generally what I do is you maybe click remove installation folders. Sometimes that fails. So just make sure you CD'd into the Joomla directory and just remove it by, yeah. So now let's go to the site, and that is Joomla has now been installed and it's now ready for configuration. Fantastic. Now at this point I'm just going to go and move our htaccess file so it's actually active. As you can see at the moment it's here and it's got the txt on the end of it, that's not active. We need to move that to .htaccess. Well, it's called move under Linux, but yeah, it's basically naming it. Let's just double check to make sure that's gone in. Yeah, that looks lovely. There it is there. Okay, so let's make sure that's working okay. Yes, htaccess is working fine. Okay, so next bit is let's go to the administrator part, back end. Let's log in. Absolutely fantastic. So we've logged in successfully, and I think now we're going to go and move on to installing the JMapMyLDAP plugins and extensions. So we go to shimanic.com. We want this one here because this includes the authentication and the group mapping, and we will in part 2 install this one here. We won't install this one here yet, we'll only install this one. So we'll do a .tar.gz of it. So right click on it, copy link address. Let's go to the extension manager even. So extension manager, install from URL, paste it in, install. Package installed successfully, fantastic. And we can now see it here. So now the plugin is installed into Joomla, and our next thing now is to configure the plugin so it picks up LDAP groups. Now I have supplied on my site, somewhere on here, a debug tool to help get things going quicker as such. It's in here. There it is here. Now I'm not going to use this in this video because I know the configuration, and I'm just going to quickly go through as well where I can see where to get the information from as well. So I'm not going to use this, but it might be helpful for you if you don't know the configuration or you've never really played with the kind of LDAP syntax before. It's very basic, could be recommended. But in any case, we're not going to use that, and we're going to go straight into and configure the authentication. Now, the first thing that I always do is I always enable the plugin straight away, because once I spent half an hour trying to work out why it wasn't working and found that it was disabled, so I would always click enabled and just click save. We know it's enabled then. Let's just be done with that. Okay, because this is Active Directory on the server 2008, we have a version 3 implementation, so we say yes. We're not using TLS. This might be needed for password changing and stuff, but I haven't got that. We can do everything in insecure LDAP. Follow referrals is also no. Now, our host, which hopefully I can bring up in a moment. This is our host here. Okay, so this is our Active Directory host. Let's click on him. And as you can see, our domain here is home.local. Okay. and the name of this machine is actually called DC, and that's a DNS name, and we're going to use a DNS name here as well, so DC. It may also be beneficial as well on your actual web server, is just to make sure that you can ping DC as well, or ping whatever your Active Directory server is. Make sure there's no firewall issues, anything else. That's good. Okay, next we are going to use a LDAP connection user to connect to LDAP. Now this is mainly used for this bit down here, for the searching. Basically what happens is that if we need to search for a user first in the directory before we can connect to it, then we need some credentials to use to connect to LDAP initially. That's kind of what happens, but this is also used for SSO as well. Definitely recommended to populate these values, and you have to populate these values if you're using search, unless you've got anonymous binding on. In any case, Active Directory doesn't have anonymous binding, so we are going to set up with this LDAP proxy here. I've just created this account. It is basic, it's just a member of domain users, it's not an administrator, it's not anything like that. We don't need an administrator on this because we're only reading from LDAP. Potentially if you install the version 2 of JMapMyLDAP, that's a different story, but I'm not going to confuse things. Easiest thing to do here is to get ADSI edit up. ADSI edit comes with Server 2008. Server 2003 you can get it from the Microsoft site in some administrative bundle or something like that. In any case, why we have ADSI edit up is because it actually gives you all the attributes and their values of each object, which is really handy for this kind of thing. And I'll show you in a moment why it's good. Okay, so we want the connect user. So in this state, I'm going to get the full distinguished name of our proxy user, which was in test user LDAP proxy. If you right click this, go to properties, click on down to distinguished name, here's the full distinguished name of the LDAP proxy user. This is what we need. Therefore, pop him in there and use the password, which is proxy in this case. Now, just for some completeness as well, in terms of if you're not using Active Directory, it's just, I don't know, you're using OpenLDAP or something else, you could also use ShellDAP as a way to find these attribute values as well. So if you logged in to ShellDAP, there's a little bit of a installation first. It's just a little config file you need to set up first, and then you can do it. This is exactly the same as traversing it as well, so let's go to cd ou equals home, ls that, and our proxy users here. So we can actually just use some standard catting to find a distinguished name here. Good. this case we are going to use search. We're using search because if you're if you have users all over the place in different OUs, you have to use search. Sometimes if it's all in one OU, so say it's only these here, you may not need to use search, but in this case we're going to use it just because, yeah, we are. So we're going to use search, and our base DM will be the bottom, like where we can search from, in other words, and we really want to be searching from the topmost place, depending on who and what and what kind of setup you have. But in this case we're going to be searching from the top, which is this domain here. We're searching straight from the domain, so in other words we're searching the entire domain. If you only want to search for people within the OU folder home, then you could just use this here as a distinguished name, as the base DM, sorry. Or even if you only want to log people on that are in this group here, then you may want to only use this. But in any case, I want to log anybody on that's in potentially anywhere in the entire domain. So because we're using search, we need a LDAP filter. Now, an LDAP filter is required because somehow we need to link a username up with an attribute in LDAP. So let's just go grab this support user here, go to properties, and let's just go have a quick look at the attributes. Okay, so what can we actually use? We can use let's go up a bit more, the SAM account name. This is the actual username of the user. This is generally what people use to log people on with, but you may also be interested in the mail attribute as well. So when we actually come to logging on to Joomla, what do you want people to type in? Do you want people to type in potentially their email? So if you do, we'd want to use the mail attribute. Or do you want people to type in their username, like here? Or potentially anything else that's in here. Yeah. It depends on your LDAP, depends on your attributes. But in any case, we're going to use, pretty standard SAM account name equals username. So what happens here is that when somebody logs in to here with, let's just say, test1, this username bit here is replaced with test1. And to test whether that would work in Active Directory, if you right click and click on to find, if you right click domain, click find, go to something like custom search, go to advanced, let's just type in SAM account name equals, grab a user, let's just call this support.test1. That users might exist. What is it? Oh, sorry, not test1, user1. There we go. So they should always find one anyway. If you start ending up, if you put a filter in here that's got more than one name in here, you potentially have an issue. You should always have one unique each time. Let's just try another one. So you can also try the LDAP.proxy as well. just to make sure it works. As you can see, when it processes it, it will find this user and it will try to log on and try to bind with this user. On Active Directory, we are going to use the user ID of SM account name. This is how users are stored in the user manager in Joomla. These three fields here are what you can see and how you distinguish users in Joomla. Okay, we're going to save this now. Hopefully that was clear enough. Let's go to here and let's try and log on with our support user, which, by the way, our support user is a test user. He's here. I've got all these test users here. So yeah, let's just try and log on with him. Okay, so successfully logged on to support user 1. This means it's connected into LDAP correctly. Just to quickly make sure, just put a load of nonsense in here. Make sure that it doesn't log in. It doesn't, so that's good. Okay, so the next bit would be dealing with group mapping. So I've just created a set of groups here. Unfortunately, I don't have a chart, but I'm going to try and explain now how these groups are set up. So we have people like support, finance, and admin users. Okay, we have these are just test user accounts. Okay, so for instance, the support user is a member of the test support group. The finance user is a member of the test finance group, and the admin user is part of the test admin group. If we go look in the groups over here, we can see in the member of that each one of these are also a member of the test group as well. So here, test group, here, test group. So basically, what I'm trying to say is that if you're a member of any of these three groups here, you're also a member of this group as well, as you can see. This I will come back to when we're starting to configure the user plugin, because this is where recursion comes in on the Active Directory LDAP group membership stuff. Because with Active Directory you have to manually recurse stuff, whereas I found with stuff like NetWare it does it itself. And I've also seen an OpenLDAP instance as well do it itself. So yeah, let's close this. To make things a little easier, I recommend this. Just create a few tabs up, because when you actually get into one of these, one of these plugins, all this becomes disabled, which is really annoying. Anyway, let's go back to our plugin manager, go to the user JMap LDAP. As I said, the first thing we do, enable it always, click save. Good, okay, we're enabled. Okay, let's go to the basic options. So in here we have sync name. Yeah, might as well sync the name. All that's basically doing is that every single time a user logs in into Joomla with an LDAP account, it will automatically sync their name from LDAP to Joomla each time they log in. Okay, and the same with email as well. You say yes. I always get yes on them. Otherwise you could end up with something different in LDAP from Joomla, so it makes sense. With this as well, I always say override yes. The reason it's not defaulted to override yes is because this was put in after the first version was released. This was on a point release, and the reason I will say override yes is because it will allow back-end automatic registration. So, for instance, if you have an LDAP user that's never logged in before, they try to go straight to Joomla's back-end, as long as they have the correct group membership, they will be registered automatically. Whereas, if this is set to inherited yes only, then it will not, it will fail. So, it's always worth saying override yes. But, as I said, because this was done on a maintenance release as such, I left it with inherited yes as a default. Okay, let's make sure that's saved from there. Let's go to the group mapping plugin. So here we're going to look at enabling this. We want to enable group mapping, yes. I don't know why that's went to no, I'll just click no. This one here and this one here should all be defaulted yes. You allow additions. What that does is that will allow Joomla to add groups to users, not on LDAP, in Joomla itself. So allow Joomla users to get Joomla groups depending on what LDAP says, and the same removals as well. I'm not too sure why you'd want these as no, but like you may want them as no, I don't know. Unmanaged groups. So you might want to have an unmanaged group if you have a group in Joomla, for instance, that isn't managed by LDAP. So say you have some group in there, and you only assign that group in Joomla User Manager. You'd also want to put the group ID, so the group ID being one of these, as a number in there, separated by semicolons. As an explanation, let's just quickly see what's in here now. So we've got 1, 2 and 8. Okay, one's public anyway, like you don't even get a public group as such anyway, so it's a bit of whatever. Registered, well, if we're registered in LDAP, we always want to be registered, so that makes sense. And I've also put super user here. Now, this is one here, this number 8 here, could be one that you want to remove. The reason I've left it in there is just in case something goes wrong in here, then a super user won't be removed. So, for instance, say that our LDAP user, say that some LDAP user has administrative super user access to Joomla, and all of a sudden this here goes wrong somehow, LDAP gets changed, something catastrophic happens, I don't know, something like that. Okay, and then when you next log on as that super user, they've lost their super user access. This 8 here will ensure that on Joomla they will not lose their super user access, whatever LDAP says. That's the reason that's there, and yeah, basically that's the idea of the unmanaged groups. Public group would normally be 1, it's normally always 1. Here we go, 1 and 1. Very, very rare you'd want to change this, but there could be instances. I'm not going to go into it now though. Okay, so let's deal with the mapping list right now. As a test, we are going to create some new Joomla groups. new, let's create one called LDAP. So we close, create a new one. Let's call this one here, what are we going to call this? This is finance. We're going to make this a parent of the LDAP here. And we're going to also make another one and LDAP called support. Okay, so here we are. There's our new junior groups. And now we're going to fill in the mapping list on the plugin. So then, what we want to do is firstly, anybody that is part of this group here, the test group, we want them to be automatically added to this group here in Joomla. So anybody part of the test group becomes part of the LDAP group in Joomla. So that has a 10. Now, we don't really want to be using this, we really want to be using AdZedit this bit, because it has the distinguished names in there. So this is a test group here. Okay, notice the CN equals test group, that's basically the start of a distinguished name for that group. That's what we need in here. And then we want to then do a colon, and we want 10. Next, we want to map anything, any users in LDAP that have the test finance user. We want to give them the finance here, so it's number 11. Oops. And let's just imagine that anybody that has support, we want them part of the support, so we want them number 12, but also because of support we also allow them to be authors as well, so we'll give them both 12 and 3. So let's go and do that now. Oops, 12 and 3. As you can see, we can allocate multiple Joomla groups with a comma there, separating the IDs. We're going to test this in a minute. Firstly though, we need to set up which attribute the groups need to be from on each user. Let's just demonstrate what I mean by that. So, for instance, if we go to a attribute called member of, is he in here? He may not actually be in here, so no. He's not in here because that is actually created. Yeah. Okay, there's not any ads here then. That's a bit of a mess up. Let's go to where we have this here. Oh, fantastic. Okay. whereabouts are we? I'll show you what I mean in a moment. Oops, home. cd o equals test users. Let's just cat out cn support user 1. Okay, in here we'll have a, there we go, there's a number of there. So you can see that that's the attribute that we want here. That will be read with this, and that will then determine which groups to map. So this is with all Active Directory, it's always going to be member of, it should be anyway. I don't believe Microsoft allow this schema to be changed and removed in terms of the member of. I think you'll probably break it if you try that. So yeah, Active Directory is always member of. And here is the recursion. So this is the bit that allows the mapping of this test group here. You can say yes, and with all these three fields here, it's literally just mainly for Active Directory. I don't think you need to install it on, I don't think you need to enable it on anything else. I think it's just Active Directory. So we press yes, and that should click save, and we're going to go and test this now. So let's just refresh that. Let's try, which one should we try first? Let's try finance user. Finance user 1. Okay, so let's go see what groups that user is now part of. And let's see if they're correct. So they're part of the LDAP group, which is correct because that user is part of test group, and they're part of finance, which is correct because that user is part of the test finance group. Fantastic, and let's do something else there. That's lovely. Okay, let's try another user. Let's try and support user, and the support user should have author access as well. It looks like they have author access because as soon as we log in, you can see a submit an article there, so that looks good. Let's go and check though. Support user assigned, so part of support, good, part of LDAP, good, and part of author. Fantastic. So they're part of everything that we've allocated. So that's basically a rundown of setting up group mapping. I think that concludes this video. Hopefully you find it helpful. Yeah, any questions, just fire away. Okay, cool.